A beacon of hope and light with a side of optimism for tomorrow. Quite frankly, it's a challenge to conceive of a situation that drives Superman, the Man of Steel, the Big Blue Boy Scout, to inflict pain onto others. Yet the idea of an evil Superman remains a favorite topic among comic writers, past and present, oftentimes fueled by a wellspring of respect for what makes the character who he is. By rendering him broken, it exemplifies how wonderful things are when he's whole. Strip him of his love, and we long for the days when he pined after Lois Lane, fastening his character to her empathetic outlook on those less powerful than he. There have been a lot of Supermen throughout the DC multiverse, and more than a few have taken a wrong turn along the way. However, these 10 evil versions of the Man of Steel remain the most pivotal to future developments with the character. Whether fully evil, bad by circumstance, or misguided, a Superman gone bad makes for a world on the brink. Number 10. Devastator Superman. Any fan of scary movies will tell you, most of the terror lies in the mystery surrounding our favorite horror villains. There's really nothing like the slow burn audiences feel as the main character, usually clueless to the threat, steadily uncovers the plot that lurks around seemingly every dark corner. And one of those corners lies within the DC multiverse, specifically the world of Earth-1. Contained as part of the dark multiverse, this is a reality that is born of the fear surrounding the Man of Steel. To be fair though, the Superman of this world gives them plenty of reason to view him with such dismay. Recounted in Batman the Devastator, the devolution of Clark begins when at random, he slaughters loads of people all over the world. His victims include heroes and villains, with his fellow Justice League members frantically searching for an answer as to why Superman is behaving this way. The lack of a clear motive renders readers helpless, much like the civilians of Earth-1, as their hero wreaks havoc in such a cruel display of his power. However, for every evil Superman, there is a Batman to oppose him. Earth-1's Batman decides to initiate a plan of last resort after witnessing something so shocking that as a Superman fan, I'm actually ever so slightly offended. Clark kills Lois Lane. This is when Batman abandons any hope of saving his friend. Now it is only a matter of stopping him outright. To that end, Bruce Wayne infects himself with the Doomsday virus to effectively fight the Kryptonian. Further, he modifies it in order to retain his sentience during the mutation and arms himself with a spear made of kryptonite. If that isn't enough, he even has kryptonite breath to meet Clark with. This artillery proves strong enough to put Superman down, but the cost remains substantial. This reality cements in your mind the dangerous capabilities of Supes while emphasizing how integral Clark's moral compass is to his character. Number 9. Zombie Superman. Back in 2005, Marvel Comics experimented with their heroes in a wicked mashup. Bringing on famed Walking Dead writer Robert Kirkman, the company released Marvel Zombies. The title should pretty much give it away as it brings readers into a twisted, misshapen world where their favorite heroes are actually flesh-eating monsters. It took another decade, but DC caught up to its competitor with the immensely creative Deceased. Written by evil Superman standout Tom Taylor, of whom we will return to later, Deceased weaves the zombie pandemic in with established DC mythology by making it the product of a warped anti-life equation. As with any zombie tale, tragedy strikes a handful of heroes early on, but the moment things get real comes at the end of issue 5. Following an infected Flash escaping into the ocean, Superman plays a fatal game of chicken with the Scarlet Speedster that absolutely disintegrates Barry. However, Supes does not come out unscathed. 2 of Barry's fingers are lodged into his abdomen after the gory act, condemning Earth's greatest hero to his grimmest fate. And to his credit, Superman flies away and tries to kill himself to prevent the turning, but he is too late. He re-enters Metropolis via a terrifying superhero landing and serves as the primary antagonist for the rest of the series. The story takes an inspiring turn with the dawn of a new Blue Boy Scout, fittingly in the form of Clark's son, John. It is his inexperienced yet morally infallible son that collides with Clark at full speed, slowing him down enough for the entirety of the Green Lantern Corps to arrive and provide assistance. The fight ends prematurely when anti-life compels Clark to fly into and drain the sun, forcing the remaining survivors to flee to Earth 2. While not strictly evil, infected Supes does wipe out nearly all life in his home city after succumbing to anti-life. Any other Superman on this list would kill for that body count, and yes, that is a very dark but intentional pun. Number 8. Druzad. Along with experimenting with genres, superhero stories offer up fascinating alternatives by taking a respective hero's villains and allowing said bad guy to spend some time as a hero. metaphorically walking a mile in the hero's goody two-shoes. We've seen Batman and Joker amalgamations in DC, Spider-Man and Doc Ock ones in Marvel, and Superman's most prominent rogue who receives this treatment is Lex Luthor. After all, the latter literally made a suit to make himself appear more like Superman. However, as a lesser-known alternative, Supes instead gives the hero's other major rogue, General Zod, a chance at stardom. Presented in JSA The Unholy Tree, this world's version of Superman is actually the psychotic Zod feigning goodness. His backstory is a tad convoluted, but essentially, Zod is banished to the Phantom Zone back on Krypton. Meanwhile, the American government is testing out teleportation technology, and boom, we have a story. Zod is teleported to Earth, raised on a farm as Clark Kent, and trained to be an agent of the government once he begins displaying his powers. His masquerade is relatively well maintained until a mission with the Bat, whose counterpart in the main universe should be obvious, and the Clock. Zod straight up murders the parasite, revealing his depravity to his companions. And from there, the rest of the story is a race against the Clock. What's up with these puns? As said Clock and the Bat try to find a Russian nuclear device before Zod does. A battle ensues involving not only these three, but all the covert agents the Bat manages to call in. Eventually, the Bat consumes a formula created by Mr. Terrific that grants him the same powers as Zod. The resulting brawl ends with Zod's defeat, but this is apparently not enough for his enemies. They proceed to shackle the Kryptonian to the nuclear device in Russia and imprison him in the upper atmosphere. I mean, that's how everyone restrains their Superman, right? Number 7. Super Doom. Yet another combination of a hero and his villain, Super Doom actually proves to be the most complex out of the handful of amalgamations. Conceived as the ultimate expression of goodness and purity, Super Doom is brought to life via Clark Kent, Lois Lane, and Jimmy Olsen's technological marvel, a machine that converts things into reality. While born of the best intentions, this Superman is contorted by the mechanisms of corporatism when it is sold to the ominously named Overcorp. The idealistic savior of the world dreamed up by Clark, Lois, and Jimmy is made into a faceless, depraved killing machine in the hopes of appealing to as many people as possible. He is a somewhat clunky critique of capitalism and the depths we can sink to in the hunt for money, but finds his footing when he begins traversing realities. Action Comics depicts his meeting with the Superman of Earth 23, Calvin Ellis, while hot on the trail of Clark, Lois, and Jimmy. Lois describes the chase in horrifying detail, speaking of an indestructible destructive machine that wreaks havoc on whatever reality he tracks them to next. When the trio bursts through a portal object into his world, Calvin finds himself squaring off with Super Doom and not exactly doing that well. In a twist of fortunes, Lex Luthor is recognized as the only man on Earth who is prepared for an out-of-control, violent Superman and traps Super Doom in between worlds. Sadly, this would not hold back his fury for long. He'd soon make his way back to Prime Earth a few issues later and viciously beat that reality Superman. That battle literally lasts for 2 issues and only ends when Super Doom's armor enters self-destruct mode of its own accord. So basically, pure, unadulterated superhero luck. Plus, Super Doom gets his revenge on Lex Luthor by destroying his warsuit. Number 6. Superman Zero. The concept of superheroes being storytelling conduits for the nuclear arms race is not a new interpretation. If a hero becomes more colorful and grand in their antics or style, so too must a villain to keep pace. Unfortunately, this idea rings true for the real world as well, though replacing superheroes with weapons of mass destruction. DC Comics approaches the story of Superman with this angle in the story of Kong Kenan, the Superman of China. Kong is not a great guy when readers are first introduced to him, but shows a more noble side when he rescues his victim from another bully, that of the supervillain Blue Condor. Kong is recorded when he does this, earning him widespread recognition as a heroic, street-level figure. It also captures the attention of the Chinese government, who quickly move to recruit him into their Superman of China project. As the title implies, this venture worked to recreate the Kryptonian being, but as a figurehead and operative loyal to China. What isn't said is that the project had an initial test subject, but he was deemed a failure. Superman Zero, the imperfect and unstable copy of the Blue Boy Scout. A brilliant and layered counter to the innocent Kenan. Superman Zero works to elevate himself from a discarded prototype to a revered model for Chinese supers everywhere. To this end, he regales himself with more decorative gear reminiscent of the country's past leaders and declares himself Emperor Superman. He attacks the Justice League of China's headquarters in an oversized display of intimidation, but it proves futile. The heroes of China, led by Kong, along with a timely interruption from the Suicide Squad, result in Emperor Supes being transformed into a monster echoing Doomsday. A grisly fate for the clone, but in a way perfectly appropriate. Fated to imitate Superman, yet he becomes one of the hero's worst enemies. series. Number 5. Brutal. An equally evil and tragic figure, Brutal is another example of cloning gone wrong. When the forces of Apocalypse arrive to conquer Earth, Steppenwolf is so over the moon that he takes a moment to entertain the cameras focused on him. It's at this moment, within the panels of Earth 2 number 16, that readers are given their first taste of, well, the brutality of this evil Superman variant. Brutal blasts Steppenwolf dead, reveals his face to the cameras, and essentially takes control of the Apocalyptian forces. Oh, and he also proclaims, "Hail Darkseid," if his allegiances were not clear enough already. So begins a long, cold occupation of Earth by the invaders, with Brutal serving as a one-man policing unit, rooting out the opposing army's remaining soldiers and sympathizers. Further, it's intentionally made unclear whether or not he is actually Superman, intensified by Lois Lane's presence in the story as a heroic Red Tornado. A chilling episode occurs when Tornado, in an attempt to reason with Brutal, escorts him to the Kent farm to potentially jog his memory. Upon Jonathan Kent's refusal to go along with the charade, Brutal kills him with his Omega beams. And this understandably shatters whatever hope Tornado has regarding this being her late husband. She is reinforced in her belief that Clark simply would not stoop to that level of depravity, no matter what may have happened to him. However, it's not all in vain, as this diversion messes with Brutal enough to make him abandon his role as the facilitator of Apocalypse's invasion. This leads him to the outer atmosphere, where he accosts Green Lantern, only to be accosted himself by Val-Zod. A battle of legacy ensues between the Supermen, with both interrogating the other about what it means to wear the emblem of L. The imperfect genetics that brought him to being end up being his downfall, as Brutal begins crumbling to dust during his duel with Val-Zod. In a stunning conclusion, whilst insisting that he is the real Superman, Brutal is swept away by the force of Red Tornado's powers. A flawed clone, yeah, but even still, he was able to effectively subjugate an entire planet. Yikes. We definitely need a Batman on that Earth. Number 4. Overman. A popular Elseworlds tale depicting a Superman of a different nationality is that of Superman, Red Sun, which imagines what the hero may have grown into had he been raised into the Soviet Union. A similar yet more disturbing proposition is made in the Multiversity Mastermen when Overman is introduced into the DC canon. As the story goes, Adolf Hitler is sitting on the toilet, no, I'm not making this up, when he is alerted to a potential asset crash landing into occupied Sudetenland. This asset, an infant aboard a small aircraft made of otherworldly metal, is raised to fervently believe in the Nazi ideals and becomes a national symbol of pride. Overman. With this powerful figure spearheading the expansion of the Nazis, it's no wonder the results of World War II, as well as the state of world affairs afterward, are categorically different from what we know as history. Nazism spreads around the globe, meeting resistance in the form of guerrilla warfare via the heroic rebel figure Uncle Sam. As the story progresses, it becomes increasingly clear that the admirable traits of Clark Kent that we all know and love exist within this variant of Supes. He wrestles with the cost of his actions, the blood he has spilled, and it's even suggested that he betrays the Nazi cause in the end by intentionally failing to see the threat of an explosion post-Metropolis. The city is left devastated by the blast despite Overman's attempts to save the city by crashing into a collapsing satellite himself. This variant proves unique as the creators at least attempt to make him relatable, though granted it is a Herculean task when you're saddled with a Nazi-led character. While undoubtedly a sympathetic portrayal of an alternate Superman, his propagation of the worst ideology in human history assures him a place amongst the super deviants. Number 3. Ultraman. A truly evil doppelganger of Supes, Ultraman was a resident of Earth 3 before he was driven from the planet along with his fellow crime syndicate members. Ultraman acts as a spiritual cousin to Bizarro, inverting several of Superman's most well-known attributes and sources of strength in subtle but significant ways. A major source of tension throughout the event of Forever Evil is Ultraman's reliance upon kryptonite. That's right, I said reliance. While Clark Kent of most realities works overtime to avoid the green rock, Ultraman gains some level of strength by inhaling the substance. He seems to have been doing this for a long time, perhaps long before fleeing Earth 3, as his tolerance levels are exponentially high, die, and the effects of the substance are mediocre at best when he reaches Prime Earth. Another significant deviation from the patterns of Superman is Ultraman's weakness to sunlight. Lex Luthor is able to discern this by observing Ultraman's realignment of the moon to enable a permanent solar eclipse. Yeah, that would be disastrous for the planet in so many ways, but come on, it's comic books, people. After the fall of the crime syndicate, Ultraman is resigned to immense pain as the heroes restore the moon to its rightful orbit, thereby negating the permanent solar eclipse that so enabled the villain. It is a somber finish to a character riddled with both complexities and simplicities that paint him as a terrifying alternative to the last son of Krypton. If his conquering Earth was not enough to make you think twice about Ultraman's moral compass, there are several instances with his fellow crime syndicate members throughout the story where he speaks of selfish ambitions, egotistical desires, and such blatant disregard for their well-being that his name now seems all the more appropriate. He is the Ultra, not Superman. Not to mention, he's defeated by Lex Luthor. What Superman is defeated by Lex Luthor? Number 2, Cyborg Superman. Arguably the most iconic evil Superman of all time, Cyborg Superman first emerged in the wake of Superman's death in the 1990s. It was an uncertain time for fans of Big Blue, as well as all the inhabitants of DC's universe. For once in a very long time, there was no Superman. To make matters worse, it wasn't because he went away on some intergalactic pilgrimage or retired to live a happy life away with Lois. No, he's dead. Doomsday murdered him. Bye-bye, most powerful being on the planet. And with the hero out of commission, several characters decided to take the opportunity to make a name for themselves. Admittedly, you have more heroic figures like Steel and Superboy emerging from obscurity to fill the void left by the Man of Steel. Then there's Hank Henshaw, a former crew member of the space shuttle Excalibur, who suffers major cosmic radiation damage after a failed mission. Rushing to Metropolis, Hank works out a way to save his wife Terry, but he passes away immediately afterward. He's not truly dead though, as he remains in the LexCorp mainframe and gains the ability to manipulate technology. Blaming Superman for his wife's death on account of the late hero's actions causing Excalibur's destruction, Hank manufactures a Superman-like body and appearance and sets about destroying the Man of Steel's reputation by claiming to be the Man of Steel. He does subdue Doomsday and save the president, but counters such good deeds with acts like allowing millions in Coast City to die by allowing Mongol to destroy it. Worse still, Cyborg Superman's villainy isn't even limited to the pages of Superman or Action Comics. The character proves a significant thorn in the side of the Green Lantern Corps once he gets a hold of multiple power rings later on. Seeing a character like Cyborg Superman outgrow their origins and begin branching out to other heroes and adventures, even if they are despicable, remains a fascinating thing to watch as the years go by. Number 1, Injustice Superman. Finally, we return to the work of Tom Taylor. While the man is responsible for such horrors as Zombie Superman, as well as lending his talents to the story of Brutal, Taylor's crowning achievement is his fleshing out of Superman from the video game Injustice: Gods Among Us. Extending the story into a long-running eponymous comic, the events that led this Kal-El down the tyrannical path he ultimately follows proves heartbreaking, intimidating, and downright horrific at times. It all begins when the Joker rigs a nuclear bomb in Metropolis to the beat of Lois Lane's heart. Once the latter stops, the bomb goes off. Collaborating with Scarecrow, Joker doses the Man of Steel with fear toxin, causing the hero to mistake his pregnant wife for the monstrous Doomsday and deliver her to space to suffocate. Superman realizes his error and, in a moment etched in the memory of DC devotees everywhere, the hero murders the Joker in front of Batman. The line having been crossed, Superman goes full despot in this universe, and Taylor charts the history of his reign through the Injustice: Gods Among Us comics. An oh so sobering reminder of the heart that beats within every reality's Man of Steel. His power lies in 3 major places: his abilities, his morality, and his humanity. With the latter destroyed, the other 2 lose their anchor, and the whole of Superman becomes unhinged. The worlds these Supermen inhabit may find themselves in the grip of death on the regular, but our world continues to be enriched by visions of an evil Superman. There were countless times while researching and writing this that I found myself grateful that regular Superman is so idealistic, so stubbornly moral, and certifiably super in his character. These ponderings of heroes losing their way remind readers of the good that comes with heroic actions and deeds. With the best of the best having suffered a detour or two from the path of good, the chance to be a hero is only more possible for real people like us. If Superman provides us a way to envision the good, why not allow him to illustrate a world born of bad? I have been Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.